Hey, welcome to another HPA Global Insights video. Today, I'm happy to welcome back our friend Brian Negley from Early Data. Brian, how's it going?
Good, really good. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. And Brian, you are the US representative for the Early Data team. And
Yep.
today, you're going to go over 2024 H1 figures for dietary supplements online sales in China, correct?
Right, correct. Yep. We'll take a dive and take a look at the market and see what our data is saying about things.
All right, well, let's get into it.
All right. Jeff, thanks again for the introduction and for the opportunity to come on the channel and speak. Again, my name is Brian. I work with a company called Early Data. We're based in Shanghai. I'll talk briefly about what we do in the beginning, but just to set the stage, we're going to be looking at data through June of 2024. So essentially the first half of 2024 and put it in historical context, look at growth rates and things like that. Um, and so we'll be taking a look at the overall market and what we have to say about the market. So just a little bit about what we do. There's a number of things we do. One of the products we have is digital shelf analytics. Under that digital shelf analytics hood, one of the things we do is category monitoring, and that's we go out every month and we pull data from a number of platforms and we report back in things like market size, market share, et cetera. We'll be looking at that data from that category monitoring service. We also do a number of other things, price and promotion monitoring. We can do that any frequency for any set of items. We do analysis on consumer comments, try to do deeper dives on what consumers are saying about particular products. And we also do consulting. Okay. These are a sample of our clients. We work almost exclusively in the health/dietary supplements field. So the vast majority of these companies are brands in those fields. These names should be recognizable to just about everybody, as well as a few agencies. Okay. So we've been collecting data actually before night 2022, despite what this slide says, we've been collecting data in this category since about 2016, but we've kind of normalized it over time. We'll be looking at basically as far back as 2018. We have a number of platforms listed in that center box, and they'll become apparent as we go through the slides. And again, this is data we pull for the health supplement category every month across a number of platforms, and then we report on the market for our clients. Okay, just declarations, copyright. You cannot take what we have and reproduce it for your own purposes without consulting us. So if you do want to know more, please get in touch. We're also happy to. This is just going to be a top line. We have a ton of information. If anybody wants to know more, just please feel free to contact me. And then the data fields, that thing at the bottom, that's kind of what I just talked through. So we, again, go out. We do have well over 100 subcategories that we report on. We will not be looking at all those in depth, but there's a lot of reporting that we have the capability of doing. Okay. And our platform logos are all at the bottom. And for users that are familiar with China, they should be familiar. Okay, so let's dig in. So we'll start off with market growth, and again, we're looking at data through the first half of 2024. What the chart shows down here in blue are basically 6-month totals for the total market. So you can see we start in 2020, the first half, and then we look at successive 6-month totals. And then this green bar up here looks at growth versus same period year ago. So if we're looking at the most recent period, 2024, the first half, we can see the first half of 2024 grew 13.2% over the same period a year ago. In other words, the first half of 2023. And that's what this green line represents. So you get a sense of the size of the market and the growth. Okay. So the growth rate's actually gone up and down, as you can see by this green line. It had a really strong beginning and end of 2023. Overall growth 2023 is strong. It's still positive. And that's well ahead of what you would see in a lot of other, categories in China, even online, as the overall market slowed down. But it has gone down. The MAT, in other words, the 12-month number for the last 12 months versus the previous 12 months, that's up 21%. Okay. If you want to look at the size of the market, first half was 62.4 billion renminbi, or a little under 9 million US. For the year, the most recent 12 months, 123 billion, or 17.5 billion US. So it is a sizable market, and it's still growing, just not at the same rate it was earlier. Okay. If we take our numbers and we split them between domestic platforms and cross-border platforms, as many viewers are likely aware, there are cross-border platforms operating in China. Those are platforms, those are generally counterparts of the domestic platforms, Tmall Hong Kong, Jingdong Global, Douyin Global, all the big domestic platforms have global counterparts that sit basically offshore. So the route to market is simpler and different. So you will find a lot of foreign products on cross-border. So what this chart shows is basically this respective sales values for cross-border in yellow and domestic platforms in green. They're pretty close to each other. Domestic outperforms cross-border for the most part. Um, but they are pretty close. This category is heavily influenced by cross borders compared to other categories. And then you'll see these lines going up and down on the top of the bars. Those are growth rates versus a year ago. So in the most recent period, you can see that cross border, the line in blue here, let me see if I can find my arrow, grown 16%. So we're taking that growth rate that we saw on the previous chart, splitting it between cross border and domestic. Again, cross-border has outgrown domestic in the recent 6 months. Okay. If we look at just share of the market, we kind of got a sense of that with on the last slide, cross-border versus domestic over the last few 6-month periods. You can kind of see going back to the beginning of 2021, cross-border had a little bit under 49%, 48.5% to be specific, domestic 51%. So domestic's always had a bit more. They bumped that share up as we saw that they were growing faster in that previous chart. They got up to as high as 55%, through most of 2020, into 2022 and in 2023. This period, because we saw cross-border outgrowing domestic, and the domestic cross-border share goes up to 47.5. So both are bigger. They've had successive relative periods of growth and outgrowing each other. This particular period, cross-border outgrows domestic. Okay, looking at specific platform shares. Okay, so some of these names we mentioned at the top. Alibaba share, they've dominated this market for quite some time. These are all the Alibaba platforms together, primarily Tmall domestic and Tmall Hong Kong. Their share was almost 70 if you go back to the beginning of trend. It's come down. Now they've still grown a little bit, 1%. That's their growth rate, but 1% in a growing market means they're losing share. Jingdong was going up for a while. They've since kind of flatlined. So they're up 6.6 in the first half, but again, that's below the market level, so they've lost share. What we do see is a rise of Douyin. Both Douyin domestic and Douyin global have grown, both in terms of the actual sales value, and in terms of their share. You can see we started covering them in the second half of 2022. Their share just shot up, and now they match Jingdong. Right below them is Pinduoduo. They're not as prominent on this chart, but they've also grown well. They've grown 22.5% in the first half of 2024, and that line also ekes up. So they've also gained some share. Okay. Kind of breaking it down another way, looking at the top brands and just seeing who they are and how they've done. Swiss and ByHealth dominate this category. They have for a long time. The Swiss brand share in the first half of 2024 was 6.2. They're the market leader, but notably they lost share, down about half point. ByHealth, number 2 at 4.2, they lost a point. So the market leaders are still the market leaders that they have been for a long time, but they lost share. Then you get some flatlining here. Who's gained share in the top 10? GNC, Move Free, and NA have all gained a little bit of share. These are their hot SKUs. These are in Chinese, if anybody happens to read Chinese out there, and the price of those SKUs. But just kind of, top 10 overall, top 2 lose, the others kind of flat with a couple of brands, of items, probably brands gaining. Okay. Taking a step back from that, but related, if you just look at the concentration of the top 10 brands on both domestic and cross-border platforms. So this is the share of the top 10 brands out of the whole market and split by domestic platforms in blue and cross-border in green. So if you go back, to the beginning of 2020, you'll see that, um, say on cross border, the top 10 brands accounted for 40% of the market, and on domestic, 31% of the market. As you march through time, you'll see those numbers come down, particularly for cross border. Cross border, the top 10 used to command 40% of the market. Now that's below 30, and even domestic, they were over 30%, and now that's below 30. So you see smaller brands making inroads is the takeaway here. Okay. If you take a look at that same issue from another angle, we'll look at domestic on the left, cross-border on the right. We'll look at the number of new brands added in 2023 and the year-on-year growth in 2024. The number of new brands that still remain active, a year later. And then what's the retention rate? So if we just focus on domestic, there were 750 new brands in 2023. Obviously, there's a lot of coming and going of brands, especially the medium and the smaller ones. Um, and in 2024, there was 6.2% growth. 581 of those brands remain active in the first half of 2024 compared to 2023. So the retention rate is a little bit over 3/4. So that means, put it another way, um, almost a quarter of the new brands on domestic platforms that were new in 2023 dropped in the first half of 2024. Similar pattern in cross-border, 284 new brands, 211 retained. So a lower retention number, which is kind of evidenced on the last chart. Less new brands on cross-border a year later than there were before, even though you have an increase in the number of brands. So it's tough to stay. It's expensive to launch. It takes a lot of work, and it's tough to stay on. There's a lot of churn, particularly when you get out of the top brands. Okay. So what's driving growth? We have seen growth in the market. We'll drill down now and take a look at some of the categories that are driving growth, both in the beginning of 2023 and 2024. So let me explain what this chart is. This chart is some of the bigger subcategories in the market. On the vertical axis that goes up and down here, you'll see the growth rate from 2023. So what was growing in the first half of 2023? And on the horizontal axis here, going back and forth in the red, you'll see the growth rate for 2024. So what we're trying to capture here is what's been consistently growing in both 2023 and 2024, because a lot of categories kind of come and go. And you'll see, and the size of the bubble represents the size of the category. So three stand out in terms of growing in 2023 and 2024, and those are eye care, eye health, vitamins here in this light green, and fish oil. Those three categories growing both in 2023 and particularly in 2024. This outlier over here, sports nutrition, really didn't grow much in 2023. It's pretty flat on the vertical axis, but it's way out here on the right in 2024. They've grown a lot this year. Okay. So vitamins we've seen have grown. Where have they grown? So we'll look at their growth rate and their contribution on some of the leading platforms. So particularly on the Tmall platforms, Tmall we know has not done well, but vitamins is one area they have done well. And so their Tmall Hong Kong accounts for 25% of the vitamin sales, and they've grown 30%. So that's one area that Tmall Hong Kong, and even to a lesser extent, Tmall have done. They've grown 5.6% in vitamins, and they have 16%. Whereas JD a little bit less, and Douyin Global hasn't done as well. You can see some of the top brands here: Centrum, GNC, Swiss are the top brands. Swiss actually has lost market share in vitamins, and we've seen overall the Swiss brand lost. GNC we did see gaining as a top brand, and this is one area that they've gained. I won't go into the details here, but you can kind of take a quick look and see some of the leading ingredients, both kind of existing core ingredients, their growth rates here. For example, B complex vitamins growing 45%, and some of the newer ingredients off a much smaller base that have grown. And then some of the pricing that's grown. So in particular, growth in vitamin prices between 100, 150 and 150 and 120. So that was a look at vitamins. Beauty was another area that we've seen grown. Okay, so where have they grown and what's grown? Same kind of chart as the last chart. Here, Douyin is really winning. Douyin Global has grown 70%, almost 77% in beauty products. Domestic Douyin's grown 20%. So they command most of the volume and they've really grown, whereas Tmall is actually negative in this category. And we've seen Tmall Hong Kong not do as well. Okay. Some of the leading brands, Swiss is the leading brand, but again, here they've actually lost market share. They have 8.5% of the beauty market, but they've lost 0.4. On this meso aesthetic, they've actually grown. They're a smaller share, but they're the number 3 beauty brand. They've grown 1.4. Same kind of thing, leading ingredients, how they've done. Collagen has slid and they continue to slide. Some of these smaller ingredients, much smaller base, and they've shown this is how they've shown. One thing to point out on the ingredients, antioxidants have grown a lot. They've grown over 20% at 23.4%, whereas some of these other leading ingredients, particularly collagen, are not doing as well. Okay. Sports nutrition we saw growing a lot this year. They've grown just about everywhere. So you can see the growth rates 94% on Douyin, 57% on Tmall, big growth on Taobao. So they've grown just about everywhere this year. Okay. And some of the leading brands in terms of market share, the CPT brand has grown a lot. Muscle Tech has been around for a long time. They've actually lost market share. And there's another new one that's grown a little bit. Core ingredients, emerging ingredients, you can kind of take a look at that and see animal protein's a big driver in some of these other ones as well. Small packs have really grown, 0 to 50 RMB have grown a lot. Also, it's a much smaller percent of the market. These 250 RMB to 300 RMB packs have grown a lot off a much smaller base, over 600%. Okay. Take a look at some of the leading platforms just to see what's growing on them. We kind of touched on this before. Tmall has not done well. But where they have done well is in vitamins. They're kind of their core categories, as we've seen before. They have grown in vitamins, and heart health related products. The bubble's small. They haven't grown as much. It's not as big for them, but they have grown here. And in vitamins and heart health, here's some of the top products. You could see a GNC and a Centrum product have grown in vitamins. And in heart health, Puritan's Pride and Swiss, there's a couple of products that have grown in their respective pricing. So they have had some success, even though overall they've struggled because they particularly missed the boat in beauty. It's a big growing category. Douyin's dominated that, and you can see beauty really large negative growth on Tmall. Flip that, Douyin, they've grown in beauty. So you can see this big bubble here. First point is all these bubbles are positive. You don't really see any negative bubbles for Douyin, meaning Douyin's growing in just about everything. The big bubble here in green is beauty, so that's been their big contributor. And some of their top items over here. This brand we mentioned is a growing beauty brand. It's mainly growing through Douyin, and there's this top 5 doctors item as well. Bone and joint health, much smaller category represented by the smaller side of the bubble, but it's more than double its size on Douyin. And here's some of the top product categories, top product items, excuse me. We did see Move Free as a brand move up. Here's one of the things that's growing them. Okay. We'll last look at a couple of hot products. One is the GLP-1 supplements. Okay. Market has grown a lot off a super small base, but it's grown a ton in China. I think this is mainly Douyin driven. It's about 2/3 Douyin driven. I guess can be considered a beauty product. Of note, these are GLP-1 supplements. They, in reading, what doctors have to say, they don't really contain GLP-1. They're just supplements that claim to activate GLP-1 or things of that sort. Regardless, they are selling. At the moment, they are selling quite rapidly. Okay. And then I can't pronounce this correctly, so I'm just going to call it ET-based products are also growing off a much smaller base. So they've grown over 4,000%. So obviously the base is really small, but some brands Swiss is an example. They've grown an awful lot in these products. Here's some example products over on the left, and then down below. So there are emerging ingredient slash product groups. These are two examples. There are others that are up and coming. That buy with sort of the vitamins and categories like that have been around a long time. So that these are some of the things that are driving that overall growth. All right. So with that, I will summarize. That's just a snapshot of what we have. We cover all the items and all these platforms I just mentioned, over 100 subcategories. There's a lot of stuff that we've got. So this is just a quick synopsis to give folks an idea of what the market's doing, taking a look at our top line data. I'll now summarize that. So the market has grown, okay? 20%, over 20% over the recent 12 months, 13.2% over the recent 6 months. So it's a slowing down of growth, but still double-digit growth nonetheless, okay? Domestic platforms have outperformed cross-border platforms over the past few years, but we did see a reversal of this in the first half of 2024. In terms of the platforms, Douyin and Pinduoduo gain share. They've outperformed market leaders Alibaba and Jingdong. Alibaba and Jingdong have slipped. They've lost share. They're still growing, but not at the pace of the market. Some of the key categories, driving growth, we talked about. Vitamins, eye care, fish oil, grown over the past couple of years. Sports nutrition's been hot this year. And then we've seen some emerging products go from basically nothing to something, and they've had growth rates well over 1,000. GLP-1 supplements and ET-based products have helped drive a little bit of that market growth in 2024, excuse me. Okay. And with that, I will close. So hopefully that's of interest and that's of use. And if anyone has any questions or would like to know more, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'd be more than happy to connect with you and see what we might be able to do for you. So thank you.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. A lot of good information there, and it's nice to see we're still, growing at double digits in China, although it seems it is slowing down a little bit, but double digits is much higher than most markets in the world right now. So China is
Sure.
still a great place to be for supplements.
Yep, sure is.
So let's check back in with you. Again, anyone has any questions, you can contact me or Brian directly. His name and email will be at the end of this. And if you want to drill down deeper, like Brian said, this is just kind of surface level. It's really good information, but Brian and his team are able to drill down much, much deeper and pinpoint things that you are in need of learning in China. So with that, again, thank you, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the opportunity.
And that's it for this edition, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, email us at info@uschinahpa.org. This channel is operated by US China Health Products Association, which is a nonprofit organization. Please consider joining the association and supporting its global endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.